Yo, what's up YouTube? My name's R.O. and this video is about the richest man in Babylon. And I wrote it here in my own affirmation journal and I'm just reading it to you for you to listen. And this chapter here is the walls of Babylon. Walls of Babylon? It's time, it's straight from the book, so I'm just going to tell you the story, alright? Banzar, a grim warrior of another day, stood guard of this passageway leading to the top of the ancient walls of Babylon. Up above, valiant defenders were battling to hold the walls. Upon them depended on the future of existence of this great city. With its hundreds and thousands of citizens over the walls came the roar of the attacking armies. The yelling of many men, the trampling of thousands of horses, the deafening boom of battering rams pounding the bronze gates. In the streets behind the gate lounged a spearman waiting to defend the entrance should the gates give way. There were but a few for the task. The many armies of Babylon were their king, far from the east on the great expedition against those others. No attack upon the city had been anticipated during their absence. They defended the forces smallly, and unexpected from the north bore down mighty armies from them, and now the walls must be held upon our Babylon was doomed. About Banzar was a great crowds of citizens, white-faced and terrified, eagerly seeking news of the battle. With hushed awe they viewed the stream and wounded dead being carried or out of the passageway. Here was a crucial point of attack. After 3 days of circling about the city, the enemy had suddenly thrown his great strength against a section of this gate. The defenders from the top of the wall fought off the climbing platforms and scaling ladders of the attackers with the arrows, burning oil, and if anything reached the top, were hit with spears. Against the defenders, thousands of enemies anchored, poured on a dead barrage of arrows. Old Banzar had the vantage point for the news. He was the closest to the conflict in the first hour of each fresh repulse of the frenzied attackers. An elderly merchant crowded close to him, his hands quivering. Tell me, he pleaded. They cannot get in. My sons are here with the good king. There is no one here to protect my old wife. My goods, they will steal all. My food, they will leave nothing. We are old and we must defend ourselves. Too old for the slaves. We shall starve, we shall die. Tell me they cannot get in. Calm thyself, good merchant, the guard responded. The walls of Babylon are strong. Go back to the Banzar and tell your good wife that the walls will protect you and all your possessions as safely as they protect the rich treasures of the king. Keep close to the walls, let the arrows flying never strike you. A woman with a babe in his arms took the old man's place as he withdrew. And you could hear the news from the top. Tell me truly that I may reassure my poor husband. He lies with fever from terrible wounds, yet insists upon his armor and his spear to protect me. Who am I with this child? Terrible, he says, will be the vengeful lust of our enemies should they try to break in. Be thou good of heart, thou mother that is, and it is again to be the walls of Babylon, and we will protect you and your babes. They are high and strong. Here they are not, and it yells of valiant defenders as they empty the cauldrons of burning oil upon the ladder of the scalers. Yes, that I do hear, and also of the roar of the battering rams that do hammer down our gates. Back to the husband, tell him the gates are strong and withstand the rams. Also that the scalers climb the walls, but to receive the waiting spear thrust. The way has been made. Leaving behind the buildings, Banzar stepped aside to clear the passage. For nearly all of these armed reinforcements, as with clanking bronze shields and heavy tread, they tramped by a small girl plucked at her girdle. Tell me, please, soldier, are we safe? She pleaded, I hear the awful noises. I see the men all bleeding. I am so frightened. What will become of our family, of my mother, little brother, and of the baby? Excuse me. The grim old campaigner blinked his eyes and thrust forward his chin as he beheld the child. Be afraid not, little one, he reassured her. The walls of Babylon will protect you and your mother and your little brother and the baby. For it has the safety of such as you that the good queen over 100 years should have. Never have they been broken through. Go back and tell your mother and little brother and the baby that the walls of Babylon will protect them and they have no fear. Day after day, old Banzar stood at his post and watched the reinforcements file up the passageway, there to stay and fight until the wounded or dead. They came down once more. Around him unceasingly crowded the throngs of the frightened citizens, eagerly seeking to learn if the walls would hold. To all he gave his answer, with the fine dignity of an old soldier, the walls of Babylon will protect you. For 3 weeks and 5 days, the attack waged with scarcely ceasing violence. Harder and grimier set the jaw of Banzar as the passage behind, with the blood of many wounded passing up and staggering down. Each day, slaughtered attackers piled up in heaps before the wall. Each night they were carried back and buried by their comrades. Upon the 5th night of the 4th week, the clamor without has diminished. The first streaks of the daylight illuminating the plains disclosed great clouds of dust raised by retreating armies. A might shall have gone up from the defenders. There was no mistaking the meaning. It was repeated by the waiting troops behind the walls. It was echoed by the citizens upon the street. It was swept over the city with the violence of the storm. People rushed from houses. The streets were jammed with a throbbing mob. The pent-up fear of weeks found an outlet in the wild chorus of joy. From the top of the high tower of the Temple of Bel burst forth the flames of victory. Skyward floated to the column of blue smoke to carry the message far and wide. The walls of Babylon had once again repulsed a mighty and vicious foe determined to loot her treasures and to ravish and enslave her citizens. Babylon endured century after century because it was fully protected. It could not afford to be otherwise. The walls of Babylon were an outstanding example of man's need and desire for protection. This desire is inherent in the human race. It is just as strong today as it ever was, but we have developed a broader and better plans to accomplish the same purpose. In this day, behind the impenetrable walls of this insurance of savings accounts and dependable investments, we can guard ourselves against the unexpected tragedies that may enter any door and seat themselves before any fireside. We cannot afford to go without adequate protection. And that was The Walls of Babylon in the book, The Richest Man in Babylon. And I just affirmed it here. I wrote it, affirmed it, spoke it, affirmed it as 2 times. So I hope you're listening. You got some information and advice. And my name's R.O. and I'll talk to you later.